The wind did not simply blow across the mountain. It howled like a living thing, screaming through the narrow passes and slamming into the slopes with merciless force. Snow whipped sideways in blinding sheets, erasing sky and ground alike until the world became a single, suffocating wall of white. Visibility collapsed to nothing. Sound warped and vanished, swallowed by the storm's endless roar. In this frozen chaos, the mountain felt ancient and hostile, a place where human presence was not merely unwelcome, but fragile, temporary, and easily erased. Somewhere within the blizzard, an engine strained in protest. The sedan crawled forward like a wounded animal, its tires spinning helplessly against black ice hidden beneath fresh snow. The steering wheel trembled violently, every correction coming a second too late. The engine whined louder, desperate and overworked, as if it sensed the inevitable. Then the road disappeared entirely, swallowed by drifting snowbanks, and gravity took over. The impact came without mercy. Metal screamed as the car slammed sideways into a tree buried beneath snow. Glass exploded outward in a spray of shards, glittering briefly before vanishing into the storm. The hood crumpled inward, the frame twisting with a brutal crunch that echoed once and then was gone. Afterward, there was a hollow stillness, broken only by the relentless wind clawing at the wreckage, as if trying to finish the job. No, move. I have to move. They're coming. Inside the ruined car, Luna drifted in and out of awareness. Pain pulsed through her skull in slow, nauseating waves. Cold seeped in immediately, biting through shattered glass and thin metal, sinking into her bones. Panic rose as her thoughts struggled to stay aligned. Survival instinct fought against dizziness and shock, urging her to act, to escape, even as her body resisted every command. She fumbled toward the door, fingers numb and clumsy, pushing weakly at twisted metal. The door refused to budge, sealed by the violent force of the crash. Snow blew in through the broken window, stinging her face, melting against her skin only to refreeze moments later. The car felt like a coffin, filling slowly with cold instead of earth. "Help! Is anyone there?" Her voice barely carried beyond the wreck, torn apart by the storm almost as soon as it left her mouth. For a terrifying moment, there was no answer, only wind, endless and indifferent. Then, faintly at first, another sound cut through the blizzard, a deep, rhythmic crunch, pressing steadily closer, snow compacting beneath tremendous weight. Horse hooves emerged from the whiteout, slow and deliberate, each step confident despite the treacherous terrain. The dark silhouette of the animal materialized like a myth given form, breath steaming violently from flared nostrils. The horse snorted, sensing fear, blood, and cold. A shadow followed beside it, broad, solid, unmoved by the storm. A gloved fist struck the window with heavy intent. The sound was dull but forceful, vibrating through the wreckage and into Luna's chest. A sudden reminder that she was no longer alone.
"Hey, are you alive in there?"
"Yes, I'm stuck. The door won't open." The reply was answered immediately by action. Metal groaned as a crowbar wedged into the bent seam of the door. The sound was raw and brutal, steel protesting against steel. Caleb's breath came in sharp bursts, each exhale fogging the air as he poured his weight into the leverage. With a final, guttural grunt, the door tore free. Freezing air rushed inside like a predator, stealing what little warmth remained. Snow poured into the car, coating the seats, the dashboard, and Luna's shaking legs. The world outside loomed vast and merciless, but it was no longer unreachable.
"What the hell are you doing on my mountain in a sedan? You city people have a death wish."
"See, please just help me. My leg." Her teeth chattered uncontrollably now, muscles locking as the cold took deeper hold. Shock dulled the sharpest edges of pain, but it could not erase the heavy, wrong sensation radiating from her leg. Every second in the open air drained her strength faster, her body already losing the battle against exposure.
Don't move.
Caleb leaned in without hesitation, his movements precise and practiced. One arm braced the roof while the other reached across her chest. The seatbelt clicked free, snapping back with sudden violence. His presence filled the car, solid, warm, and immovable, a stark contrast to the chaos outside.
I'm pulling you out. It's gonna hurt.
He lifted her in one decisive motion. Pain exploded through Luna's body, ripping a scream from her throat as her injured leg shifted. The sound vanished instantly into the storm, but the agony lingered, white-hot and consuming, stealing her breath.
You're freezing. Hypothermia is setting in. My truck is useless in this snow. We have to ride.
Ride? Caleb turned toward the waiting horse and raised 2 fingers to his lips. The whistle cut cleanly through the wind, sharp and commanding. The massive black horse stepped closer, its size overwhelming, its presence steady and unafraid. Snow clung to its mane and lashes, but its dark eyes were alert and intelligent.
Demon, come here. You're getting on the horse.
I've never ridden a horse. There was no time for reassurance and no room for comfort. Survival stripped the moment down to its raw essentials. Caleb moved with effortless strength, lifting Luna as if she weighed nothing, settling her into the saddle with practiced ease. The horse shifted, but remained steady beneath her.
Today is a good day to learn. Wrap your arms around my waist, under the coat, and hold on tight. If you let go, you die in the snow. Do you understand?
The wind outside did not merely howl. It clawed at the cabin like a living thing, shrieking through the trees and hurling snow against the walls in relentless waves. When the heavy wooden door slammed shut, the sound echoed through the small structure with finality, the iron lock biting into place as if sealing them off from the world beyond. Inside, the sudden quiet felt immense. A massive stone hearth breathed low, steady warmth into the room, the fire within it crackling and popping, casting long, restless shadows across rough-hewn logs and the low ceiling. Snow fell from Caleb's boots in clumps as he stomped them against the floor, each dull thud leaving a wet, darkened print on the old planks. Meltwater spread slowly, seeping into the cracks of the wood. His breath fogged in front of his face, evidence that even with the fire burning, the cold still ruled the air. The cabin smelled of smoke, leather, and old pine, a place meant for survival, not comfort.
We made it. The main house is too far. We are staying in the hunting cabin tonight.
He crossed the room and lifted an oil lamp from a hook near the hearth. The flame sputtered as he struck it to life, then steadied, bathing the space in a warmer, amber glow. The light revealed every harsh angle of the cabin: the scarred table, the stacked firewood, the heavy chest against the wall. Caleb turned back toward her, the lamplight catching in his eyes as his expression sharpened with concern.
Let me look at you.
Luna sat curled on a woven rug near the fire, her knees drawn in close to her chest as if she could fold herself smaller against the cold. Her shoulders shook uncontrollably, each tremor rattling through her bones. The rug beneath her did little to keep the chill from leaching up from the floor, and her breath came out in short, uneven gasps. I am so cold. Caleb lowered himself in front of her, the floor creaking under his weight as he knelt. He studied her face with a soldier's efficiency, his jaw tightening as he took in the color in her skin. Her lips had faded to a dangerous blue, and when he brushed the back of his hand against her cheek, he flinched at the shock of her temperature. It was not just cold, it was the kind that stole strength and clouded the mind.
Your lips are blue. Ice cold. Take your clothes off.
The words landed heavily in the small room, hanging in the air between them. Luna's eyes flew wide, fear and disbelief flashing through them as another violent shiver tore through her frame. The fire cracked loudly, punctuating the moment. What? No. Caleb straightened slightly, his voice hardening even as his posture remained controlled. There was no anger in him, only urgency sharpened by experience. He had seen what cold could do and how quickly it could turn deadly when ignored. Every second mattered, and his patience was already burning away like oil in the lamp.
Listen to me. Your clothes are soaked with melted snow. If you keep them on, your heart stops in 10 minutes. I do not want a frozen corpse in my cabin. Strip now. I will turn around.
Luna swallowed, her teeth chattering as she struggled to force the words out. Her fingers clenched into the heavy, wet fabric at her sides, the cold pressing in like a vice. Embarrassment warred with fear, and fear was winning. Do you have anything I can wear? Caleb rose to his feet and moved to the battered wooden chest near the wall. The hinges groaned as he threw it open, digging through folded blankets and spare gear with brisk, practiced motions. He pulled out a thick flannel shirt, worn but clean, and turned back toward her.
I have a flannel shirt. It is clean.
He tossed it toward her, the fabric landing softly in her lap. Then he reached for a heavy buffalo hide draped over a nearby chair, its coarse fur catching the firelight. His tone left no room for argument as he gave his final instructions.
Put it on and wrap yourself in the buffalo hide. I am going to check the horses. You have 5 minutes.
The door opened with a rush of screaming wind, snow swirling briefly into the cabin before Caleb stepped outside. It slammed shut again just as quickly, the lock clicking home and cutting off the storm. Silence followed, broken only by the fire and faint movement. Luna's hands shook as she peeled the wet clothes from her body, the fabric clinging stubbornly to her skin before finally giving way. The cold bit even harder for a moment, drawing a soft sob from her throat. She pulled the flannel shirt on with clumsy fingers, wrapped the buffalo hide around her shoulders, and curled near the fire. She cried quietly as each breath slowly grew steadier and the heat began to seep back into her. The door creaked open under the weight of the storm pressing against it, a low groan of wood protesting cold and wind. Snow dusted Caleb's shoulders as he stepped inside, carrying an armful of firewood that smelled sharp and raw, like freshly split pine. When he dropped it by the hearth, flakes scattered across the floor and melted into dark spots. He straightened slowly, rolled his shoulders, then brushed his hands together to knock away dirt, bark, and the lingering bite of the cold. The cabin felt smaller with him back inside, the air shifting as warmth and danger reclaimed the space.
Decent?
Yes, Caleb turned toward her, expecting to see the same fragile figure curled under blankets. Instead, he saw her standing there in his shirt, the fabric swallowing her frame and hanging to her knees like something borrowed from another life. For a brief second, he froze. The lamplight hollowed her cheeks, making her look thin and almost unreal, as if she might fade if he blinked. The storm rattled the walls, but inside, the moment stretched, quiet and heavy.
You look like a ghost. Drink this. Whiskey, straight. It will warm your blood.
He pressed the bottle into her hands without ceremony. The glass was cold, the liquid inside catching the light like fire trapped in amber. The smell alone was enough to sting her eyes, sharp and unforgiving, promising heat at a cost. It burns. She coughed as the whiskey scraped down her throat like liquid flame. Her eyes watered and her body shuddered as warmth spread too fast and too intense, shocking her system awake. It hurt, but it also anchored her and pulled her back from the edge of numbness the storm had been dragging her toward.
Good. Now show me the leg.
She shifted her weight carefully and lowered herself so she could lift her injured foot. Every movement sent a dull throb up her leg, a reminder of how close she had come to breaking something far worse than bone. It is my ankle. I think I twisted it. Caleb sank onto the floor in front of her, the boards creaking beneath his weight. Without asking, he took her foot and rested it in his lap. His hands were massive and roughened by years of work, the pads of his fingers calloused and warm against her pale, delicate skin. The contrast was startling, like stone against porcelain. He examined her slowly, turning her foot with surprising care as his brow furrowed, and he took in every detail.
You have strange feet, calluses, scars, broken toes. These are not normal feet.
His thumb traced the hardened skin and the faint ridges of old injuries that never quite healed right. These were feet that had suffered and endured pressure and pain over and over again, shaped by discipline rather than comfort. I am a dancer, a ballerina. My feet are my tools. Caleb lifted his head slowly, his eyes searching her face as if trying to reconcile the word ballerina with the storm, the crash, and the remote Montana wilderness pressing in on all sides.
A ballerina in Montana in a blizzard. Who are you running from, dancer?
The question lingered between them, heavier than the silence that followed. The wind howled outside and rattled the windows as if it wanted in on the answer. Just life. She looked away, and her jaw tightened. The word life felt too small and too simple for everything she was not saying. Caleb's hands tightened slightly, his skepticism clear even before he spoke.
Liar, people do not drive off cliffs in a blizzard because of life. But I do not care, not tonight.
He twisted her ankle just enough to test it, careful but firm. Pain flared, sharp and bright, and stole her breath for a second. Satisfied, he released it and reached for the bandage, wrapping her ankle with steady precision. Each turn of the cloth was secure and practiced, grounding her in the present moment.
It is sprained. Stay off it. I am sleeping in the chair. You take the cot.
He finished the wrap and let her foot rest back on the floor, already pulling away and retreating into distance, as if closeness itself was dangerous. Caleb, thank you. He did not look at her. Instead, he stood, crossed the room, and sank into the chair. The wood groaned under him as he tugged his hat down over his eyes and shut her out.
Do not thank me. The storm will last 3 days. You are stuck with me, and I am not good company.
Morning arrived slowly at Iron Ridge, not with noise or haste, but with a quiet, deliberate patience. Pale sunlight spilled across the snow-covered ground, each drift reflecting the light like shattered glass. Birds stirred in the nearby pines, their calls sharp and clear in the cold air, as if testing the day. Inside the cabin, warmth pushed back against winter's grip. Bacon crackled in a cast-iron pan, fat, sizzling, and popping, while the deep, comforting aroma of coffee rose from the pot, curling through the room like a promise of survival and routine. The kitchen was simple and worn, shaped by years of necessity rather than comfort. Steam fogged the window panes, blurring the white wilderness beyond into an indistinct glow. Every sound felt amplified in the quiet morning, the scrape of a chair leg, the soft clink of cutlery, the steady breath of two people sharing a space that was still new and uncertain. Outside, Iron Ridge stood vast and watchful, indifferent to human fear, yet offering no easy shelter either.
Eat. We need energy.
Caleb did not look up as he spoke. His focus remained on the plate in front of him, movements efficient and almost mechanical. The words were not unkind, but they carried the weight of experience, of someone who understood that the mountain did not care about comfort, only endurance. Food was fuel here, nothing more and nothing less. What are we doing today? Luna moved toward the table slowly, each step careful. Her body still bore the quiet protest of injury, and she favored one leg as she walked, teeth clenched against the dull ache. The warmth of the cabin was deceptive, softening the edges of pain without erasing it. She lowered herself into the chair, eyes flicking briefly toward the window, as if expecting movement where there was none.
I am checking the fence line. The storm knocked down trees. The cattle will get out. You are staying here.
Caleb finally looked at her then, his gaze steady and assessing. Outside, the storm's aftermath lingered, broken branches, bent wire, and the silent threat of livestock wandering into the wild if left unchecked. His tone was matter of fact, as though the plan were already settled beyond discussion. Staying behind, in his mind, was simply the safest option. I cannot stay here alone. What if someone comes? The words rushed out of her. Brittle with fear, she could no longer keep contained. Her hands tightened around the edge of the table, knuckles paling. The cabin, moments ago a refuge, suddenly felt isolated and exposed. Silence pressed in around her question, heavy with the things she was too afraid to name.
Who would come? Tell me the truth. Now, or I put you back on the highway.
Caleb froze mid-chew, the motion halting as if interrupted by instinct. Slowly and deliberately, he set his fork down. The small sound of metal against wood echoed louder than it should have. When he spoke again, his voice was low and stripped of patience. This was not curiosity. It was a demand. Men, bad men. I saw something I should not have seen in New York. The police put me in protection, but there was a leak. They found me. I drove west until I could not drive anymore. If they find me, they will kill me. Her voice shook as the truth spilled out, each sentence pulling loose a knot she had tied too tightly for too long. New York felt impossibly far away, yet the danger followed her still, stretched thin but unbroken. Fear lived behind her eyes, sharp and immediate. Saying it aloud did not make it smaller. It made it real. Silence claimed the room. Caleb rose from his chair without a word, the decision already forming before thought could interfere. His boots sounded heavy against the floor as he crossed to the wall-mounted gun rack. He reached up, fingers firm around the shotgun, and in the stillness, the sound of it being loaded cut through the air with unmistakable finality. "What are you doing?" Luna's breath caught as she watched him. The weapon was not a threat, but a declaration. Her heart hammered, uncertainty crashing against a fragile thread of relief. Whatever this man decided next would shape whether Iron Ridge became her grave or her shield.
This is Iron Ridge, my land. No one comes on my land without an invitation. Put your boots on. You are coming with me. I cannot protect you if you are not in my sight.
He turned back to her and pressed a heavy coat into her arms, its weight solid and reassuring. The words were plain and uncompromising, carved from the same resolve that kept this place standing against storms and solitude alike. Protection here did not mean hiding. It meant facing the cold, the danger, and the truth together, out in the open where he could see it coming. The world around them breathed with a living cold. Snow lay thick over the ground, unbroken except for deep hoofprints and the scattered tracks of animals that had long since fled. The air carried the sharp scent of pine and ice, each breath frosting instantly, each exhale a small cloud of proof that they were still alive. Horses shifted nearby, their powerful bodies radiating steam as they snorted and stamped, hooves crunching into the snow with a steady, impatient rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, the wilderness stretched endlessly, indifferent and vast.
My truck is still buried. We take the horses. Demon is too spirited for you. You take Bessie. She's old and slow.
Caleb's voice cut through the cold with practiced certainty. He stood tall beside the horses, already making decisions the way men did when survival demanded speed over discussion. Demon tossed his dark head, muscles rippling beneath his coat, while Bessie barely glanced up, ancient eyes dull but steady. The contrast between the two animals mirrored the tension in the air. Wild force versus stubborn endurance, both shaped by the same unforgiving land. "I can't. My ankle hurts." Luna struggled beside the horse, fingers clutching at the saddle as she tried to pull herself up. The motion sent a sharp, punishing flare through her ankle, pain blooming hot beneath layers of cold. Her breath hitched despite her effort to stay quiet. Snow soaked into her gloves as she steadied herself, frustration and vulnerability mixing in equal measure. The wilderness offered no sympathy. It only waited to see whether she would rise or fall.
Fine, you ride with me again.
Caleb exhaled, the sound heavy with resignation rather than anger. He stepped closer, hands firm and sure as he lifted her with surprising ease. In one smooth motion, he pulled her up onto Demon, settling her in front of him. The horse shifted under the added weight, muscles coiling, breath steaming harder now. Luna's senses sharpened all at once, the height, the cold, the sudden awareness of Caleb's presence directly behind her. As she settled into the saddle, the world seemed to narrow. Caleb mounted behind her, his movements controlled and economical. His body pressed close, not by accident, but by necessity, his warmth an immediate contrast to the biting air. His arm came around her to take the reins, chest solid against her back, forearms bracketing her in a protective cage that left no room for doubt or escape.
Hold the pommel, relax, you're stiff as a board. Demon senses fear. If you panic, he panics. Lean back.
His instructions were calm, almost intimate in their closeness. Luna's fingers tightened around the pommel, knuckles aching as she forced herself to obey. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned back, her spine coming to rest against him. The contact was unavoidable now, the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the solid heat of his chest, the way his arms held her without squeezing. Fear fluttered in her chest, but beneath it was something else. Trust, fragile and unspoken. "You feel solid, like a rock." The words slipped out before she could stop them, honest and raw. In that moment, surrounded by snow and silence, Caleb felt immovable, like part of the mountain itself. Luna let herself rest just a little more against him, aware of how small she felt by comparison, how easily the world could break her if not for the shelter of his presence.
And you feel fragile, like you'll break if I squeeze too hard. Walk on.
His voice vibrated close to her ear, low and steady, carrying both warning and restraint. With a soft click of his tongue, Demon began to move. The horse's gait settled into a measured rhythm, each step crunching through the snow as they pushed forward into the white expanse. The motion pressed their bodies together again and again, not with urgency, but with inevitability. They rode through the white wilderness as if suspended in time. Snowflakes brushed against their faces, melting instantly against skin warmed by shared heat. The rhythm of the horse rubbed them together, a constant reminder of proximity and dependence. It wasn't sexual, at least not yet. It was survival, pure and simple. Yet for Luna, cocooned by Caleb's strength and guided through the deadly cold, it was the safest she had ever felt, as though nothing in this frozen world could reach her as long as he was there. The sound of wire cutters snapped through the thin mountain air, a sharp metallic bite echoing off the trees. Each squeeze was followed by the dull thud of a hammer meeting wood, patient and rhythmic, as if the land itself were being persuaded rather than conquered. The fence line stretched unevenly through snow-crusted ground, half built and half promised. Cold pressed in from every direction, yet the labor carved out its own heat, a small pocket of human will standing against the season. Caleb worked without a shirt, his breath steaming briefly before dissolving. Sweat traced slow paths down his chest and spine, catching at old scars and the map of age written into muscle. Motion kept the cold at bay. Each swing of the hammer was deliberate and economical, born of years of doing things the hard way. He looked less like a man performing a task and more like part of the landscape, fixed and unyielding as the posts he drove into the frozen earth. "Aren't you cold?" Luna stood a few steps away, her boots sinking into the snow, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity she did not hide. The question was simple, but beneath it hummed concern and curiosity. The wind toyed with loose strands of her hair, brushing them against her cheeks as if urging her closer. She did not look away, afraid the moment might slip if she blinked.
Work keeps you warm. Hand me the pliers.
He did not turn fully toward her, only angled his shoulder while staying focused on the fence. One hand extended back, open and waiting, confident she would understand without further explanation. It was the gesture of someone used to working alone, yet unafraid of silent cooperation. She stepped closer and placed the pliers into his palm. Their fingers brushed briefly. Her skin was cold from the air, his hot and rough with effort. The tools changed hands, but something else lingered. Unspoken, vibrating like a held breath.
Your hands are shaking again. Are you scared or cold?
Caleb paused mid-task and finally turned to look at her. His attention sharpened with careful concern. He noticed the small things, the tremors and the silences, as the fence and the cold faded from focus. Neither. I'm just looking at you. You are very different from the men in New York. They wear suits and get manicures. You look like you wrestled the mountain and won. Her answer was soft but unwavering. She met his scrutiny without retreat. The city she named felt impossibly far away, leaving only the raw truth of the moment in the snow and silence.
I'm old, Luna. My back hurts. My knees crack. I'm 54. I've buried a wife and a son. I'm not a sight for a 22-year-old girl.
He wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a smear of salt and fatigue. The confession was blunt, placing his age and grief between them like another fence. He spoke to anchor expectations in reality. You're right. You're not a sight. You're a force of nature, and I think I like it. She stepped closer, the snow crunching softly beneath her boots. Her breath fogged between them as she spoke with calm certainty, reframing him as something felt rather than admired from afar. Caleb dropped the hammer into the snow with a dull, final sound. His jaw tightened as restraint replaced motion, a warning edged with fear rather than anger.
Don't look at me like that. I am protecting you because it's the right thing to do, not because I want a young lover.
The words came out sharp and defensive. He stood rigid with empty hands, drawing boundaries to save himself from a desire he did not trust. Who said anything about lovers? I just said, I like looking at you. Her reply was gentle, with a quiet challenge. She studied him without demand, allowing the moment to remain unforced and alive.
Get back on the horse before I do something we both regret.
His growl settled into a rough command as he stared at the unfinished fence. The mountain stood silent around them, while the choice hung heavy and unresolved in the cold air. Nightfall did not arrive gently. It sank over the mountains like a living thing, heavy and deliberate, swallowing the last traces of color from the sky. The trail back twisted through dense pines, their black silhouettes pressing in from all sides as if listening. Somewhere far beyond the trees, a long, mournful howl spread across the cold air, answered again and again until the sound stitched itself into the darkness. Beneath them, the ground felt uncertain and frozen, and the night smelled of snow, iron, and wild hunger. Demon the horse sensed it before either rider fully did. His ears pinned back, and his muscles bunched beneath his hide as nervous breath fogged the air. The leather saddle creaked while he shifted, hooves striking stone with a sharper edge. Fear moved through him like a current, an animal certainty that predators were closing in with purpose.
Shh, easy, boy.
Caleb leaned forward, one hand tightening on the reins and the other pressing against the horse's neck in a steadying rhythm. His voice remained low and controlled, tension threaded through it from hard-earned experience. His eyes scanned the tree line, reading shadows and listening for patterns that did not belong to the forest. What is it? Luna's arms tightened around Caleb's waist as she leaned closer, her breath shallow as every sense strained to name the threat she could feel. The cold cut through her coat, but it was nothing compared to the dread creeping up her spine. warning her that whatever hunted them did not fear the dark.
Timber wolves, a pack. They are hungry.
The howling swelled and fractured into sharp barks snapping through the trees. It became direction and coordination rather than sound alone. Caleb recognized the cadence of hunters spreading out and funneling prey, and the realization settled in his chest like a stone.
They are tracking us.
Branches cracked to their left and then to their right as shadows flowed between the trunks. Eyes caught faint moonlight, low bodies moving fast. The pack no longer guessed. They knew the horse's scent, his rhythm, and the weight he carried, and the forest seemed to lean inward with them.
Hold on tight. We need to gallop.
Demon surged forward, hooves hammering the frozen earth as speed tore through the silence. The world narrowed to motion and sound, the thunder of galloping, snapping branches, and Luna's breath against Caleb's back. The relentless rhythm drove them onward, even as exhaustion clawed at muscle and bone. The wolves ran with them, snarls so close, Luna felt the vibration in her ribs. Hot breath flashed at the edge of her awareness, teeth snapping at empty air as the predators kept pace with terrifying ease. Every second stretched, each stride threatening to be the one that failed. Caleb, they are right there. Her voice broke against the wind, panic raw and unfiltered. She twisted enough to see gray shapes lunging through snow, powerful bodies closing the distance. The knowledge that they were being tested for weakness made her grip tighten until her fingers ached. Caleb decided without slowing, releasing one hand from the reins with practiced precision. The revolver cleared its holster, cold metal biting into his palm, its weight both promise and risk.
Keep your head down. Cover your ears.
Luna obeyed instantly, folding forward against his back as the night shattered. Gunshots cracked like winter lightning and echoed through the trees. The smell of burning powder mixed with snow, and nearby, a wolf cried out in pain. The shots did not end the pursuit, but they broke its rhythm. The pack hesitated and recalculated as hunger battled survival, and Caleb drove Demon onward through that brief opening.
Go.
They burst from the trees into an open clearing where the cabin waited, dark but solid. Demon skidded to a stop, sides heaving and hooves scraping ice as silence rushed back, broken only by distant, frustrated howls. Caleb's breath tore in and out as he twisted in the saddle, searching Luna with frantic focus. The danger still clung to him, vivid and personal despite the distance.
Are you okay? Did they bite you?
No, I am fine. You saved us. He dismounted in an instant and pulled Luna down against him, the force of it half relief and half fear. His hands moved over her shoulders and back again and again, checking as if injury might appear if he looked away.
I told you this land is dangerous. I told you.
The words burst out raw and uncontrolled, carrying echoes of everything he had lost. His voice shook with terror barely held back, born from imagining a future ripped away before it could begin.
You could have been killed.
But I was not. You were there. Her simple certainty cut through the chaos and anchored him as the adrenaline drained away. The mountains stood silent around them, as if listening. Caleb faltered as memories pressed in, then lifted his hands to her face, grounding himself in her warmth and breath, in the undeniable fact that she was alive.
I cannot lose anyone else on this mountain. You are staying inside. Forever.
Forever? His gaze darkened as possession and fear intertwined, the world narrowing until only she remained within his reach.
Yes.
He kissed her, sudden and overwhelming, gunpowder still sharp on his lips and mingling with the sting of snow. It was desperate and claiming, charged with the terror of what had almost been lost and the promise that he would not let it happen again. 2 days had passed since the last snowfall, and the world seemed to be holding its breath. The white silence that once smothered the land had loosened its grip, leaving behind a raw, exposed quiet where every sound carried farther than it should. The sky hung low and pale. and the forest surrounding the cabin stood motionless, its branches dripping slowly as melting snow surrendered to gravity. Time felt stretched here, as if the land itself was waiting for something inevitable to arrive. That waiting ended with the distant growl of engines. The sound did not announce itself all at once. It crept forward, a low vibration traveling through frozen ground and up the wooden bones of the cabin. Gravel shifted and popped beneath heavy tires, each crunch deliberate, mechanical, and wrong against the natural stillness. The approaching SUVs sounded confident, practiced, as though the road belonged to them, even though every inch of it cut through land that had never invited strangers. Outside, Caleb stood by the chopping block, his breath fogging the cold air with each measured exhale. The axe rose and fell in a steady rhythm, wood splitting cleanly beneath practiced strength. Each strike echoed softly into the trees, a working man's sound, honest and rooted. His boots were dusted with old snow and bark, his movements unhurried, as if the world beyond the tree line had no claim on this moment. Inside the cabin, Luna pressed herself to the window, fingers cold against the glass. Her reflection wavered over the pale landscape as she strained to see through the thinning trees. Fear sharpened her vision, pulling familiar shapes into terrifying clarity. Dark vehicles. No markings she could trust. The past surged forward in her chest, relentless and loud, drowning out reason as recognition hit her like a blow. Caleb, it is them, the black SUVs. They found me. The axe stopped mid-motion. Silence snapped into place where labor had been. Caleb lowered the blade slowly, the metal head biting into the stump with controlled restraint. He did not rush, did not curse, did not look toward the road right away. Instead, he straightened, the weight of the moment settling into his shoulders, grounding him as deeply as the roots beneath his feet.
Go inside, lock the door. Do not come out until I say so.
Luna's heart hammered as she turned from the window, the sound of engines now unmistakable. The vehicles were close enough that she could feel them, a pressure building in the air. Images of men stepping out with weapons, of commands barked and choices stolen, crowded her thoughts. Panic clawed up her throat, demanding to be heard before it crushed her entirely. They have guns, Caleb. You are just one man. Caleb reached for his hat, the gesture unassuming but deliberate. He settled it onto his head with care, adjusting the brim as though preparing for a long day's work rather than a confrontation. His eyes finally lifted toward the road, calm and unflinching. There was no bravado in him, only certainty, an understanding carved by years of living with the land rather than passing through it.
I am not just a man, I am the landowner, and they are trespassing. Go.
The cold announced their arrival before they spoke. Car doors slammed shut with hollow, metallic finality, echoing across the frozen land like gunshots. Boots pressed into the snow, each step producing a sharp, brittle crunch that carried through the still air. Frost clung to the ground and fence posts, and to the breath of the three men in dark suits as they moved forward in tight formation. The ranch stood quiet and watchful, as if the land itself was holding its breath.
Old man, step aside. We are here for the girl. Give her to us, and we will leave you a pile of cash. Refuse, and we burn this shack down with you in it.
Caleb did not rise to meet the threat. He remained seated on the porch railing, relaxed to the point of insult, the winter wind tugging at his coat. A hunting knife rested in his hand as he slowly cleaned beneath his fingernails, every motion deliberate and unhurried. His posture spoke louder than any weapon. This was his land, and he was not afraid.
You city boys, you always talk too much. You see that sign on the gate? What sign?
Caleb's eyes lifted at last, calm and steady. The cold sharpened the silence between them until it felt ready to snap. In the distance, wind whispered through bare branches, carrying the unspoken history of the place, warnings given and consequences paid.
Trespassers will be shot. It is not a suggestion, it is a promise.
The lead man laughed, harsh and brittle, more bravado than humor. His hand slid inside his coat and emerged with a gun, the metal dark in his grip. Snow crunched as he adjusted his stance, certain that fear would follow.
There are 3 of us. You have a knife.
Caleb raised 2 fingers to his lips and whistled, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the cold air. The world answered immediately. From the barn, the tree line, and the surrounding woods came the sound of rifle bolts clicking into place, a mechanical chorus that surrounded the intruders. Shadows shifted as disciplined figures emerged with weapons trained. The men in suits were no longer hunters. They were prey.
I have 5 hands, all ex-military, all better shots than you, and I have a Winchester pointed at your chest right now.
Caleb reached beside him and lifted the rifle with practiced ease, the barrel aligned with the hitman's chest as naturally as pointing a finger. This was not a bluff.
Okay, we do not want a war.
The confidence drained from the man's face, replaced by tight, calculating fear. His voice wavered as his eyes darted toward the rifles aimed at him from all sides. The cold crept under his collar and settled into his bones.
Too late, you threatened my woman. That is an act of war.
The gunshot tore through the air with violent finality. The bullet struck the frozen ground inches from their feet, spraying snow and dirt. The sound rolled across the land like thunder, a warning etched in noise and force.
Run. If I see your dust in 5 minutes, I start aiming for heads.
Panic took over. Boots slipped on ice as the men turned and ran, abandoning all control. Car doors flew open, engines roared, and tires screamed as they fled down the frozen path. The sound faded, leaving the ranch quiet once more, unchallenged and undefeated. The heavy wooden door groaned as it swung open, its old hinges protesting against the sudden rush of cold air. Night spilled into the house like a living thing, thick with snowlight and silence. Outside, the wind still carried the memory of the blizzard, whispering over frozen ground and rattling loose boards along the porch. Footsteps broke the stillness as Luna burst through the doorway, her breath sharp and her heart racing, as if the walls themselves could no longer contain the question burning inside her. You sent them away?" She stood just beyond the threshold, framed by snow and darkness, her coat half-buttoned and her hair disheveled from fear and relief tangled together. Her eyes searched Caleb's face with desperate intensity, as though the answer might change shape if she looked hard enough. The past days of sirens, accusations, and the threat of being taken pressed against her chest, waiting to either crush her or finally release their grip.
They will not come back. I made a call to the sheriff and the governor. They know who protects you now.
Caleb's voice was steady, but his shoulders carried the weight of every call made and every line crossed. The room smelled faintly of smoke and wet wool, remnants of survival rather than comfort. By invoking names that carried authority far beyond the ranch, he had drawn a line in the snow, one that could not easily be erased. Protection in this place was never free. It always demanded something in return. "Thank you. So, I am free? I can go back to New York?" She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face into his chest. The embrace was instinctive and almost childlike, born of relief so overwhelming it left her weak. His jacket was stiff with cold, smelling of leather and winter air, but beneath it, she felt the solid proof that he was real, that he had stood between her and everything that threatened to break her. The word free echoed in her mind, fragile and dazzling. Caleb stiffened at her touch, not out of rejection, but restraint, as though allowing himself even a second longer would undo him completely. His hands hovered before finally settling, careful and measured, as if holding something already slipping away.
Yes, the road is clear. I will drive you to the airport. You can go back to your ballet, your stages, your lights. This ranch is just mud and blood. It is no place for a swan.
As he spoke, he gently eased her back, creating a careful distance between them. His words painted a world far from this one. Polished floors, soaring music, and applause like thunder. In contrast, the ranch loomed behind him, steeped in history, sacrifice, and violence buried beneath the snow. To him, the choice seemed obvious. She belonged to brightness and grace, not to a land that demanded hardness to survive. Is that what you want? After everything? After the blizzard? After the kiss? She pulled away fully now, her hands falling to her sides. The cold rushed back in, filling the space where his warmth had been. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with something far more dangerous: hope. The blizzard they had survived together, the shared breath in the dark, and the kiss that had blurred every line she thought she understood, all stood between them, demanding to be acknowledged. Caleb turned away, his boots scraping softly against the wooden floor. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a man bracing himself against an oncoming storm. Outside, the wind rose again, brushing snow against the walls as if the world itself were listening.
What I want does not matter. I am 54. I am a relic. Go, Luna, before the snow traps you again.
His back was to her now, broad and unyielding, yet heavy with unspoken longing. The words sounded final, shaped by years of loss and responsibility and by a life that had taught him to endure rather than ask. Snow continued to fall beyond the door, soft and relentless, a reminder that time here did not wait for hesitation. The choice hung between them, as vast and silent as the frozen land itself. Night settles over the barn like a living thing, heavy and intimate, wrapping the wooden beams in shadow and quiet. Dust floats lazily through shafts of moonlight slipping between the slats. Caleb stands beside Demon, his movements slow and practiced as the brush drags through the horse's dark coat, the rhythm of it as familiar as breathing. Each stroke is grounding, a way to keep his thoughts from wandering too far. Somewhere beyond the walls, the land stretches out wild and endless, breathing with the wind. Then, threading through the stillness, comes music. Soft, deliberate, impossibly elegant for a place like this. Tchaikovsky drifts through the barn, foreign yet haunting, as if the night itself has learned a new language.
What is that noise?
He turns, the brush pausing mid-stroke, Demon flicking an ear as if he too senses the shift. Caleb's voice carries a mix of suspicion and wonder, roughened by long days and colder nights. The music does not belong to his world of soil and sweat. It glides instead, refined and aching, pressing against the barn's rough edges. His gaze moves toward the doorway, heart thudding with a feeling he does not yet name. It's Swan Lake. I missed my flight. Luna stands framed by the open barn doors, moonlight spilling around her like a promise. She wears a simple white dress, unadorned and honest, the fabric catching softly against her legs as the night breeze slips inside. For a moment, she looks unreal, too delicate for the splintered wood and hay-strewn floor, yet her eyes are steady and certain. The music seems to follow her in, clinging to her presence, filling the space between them with a fragile, trembling hope.
Why?
The word escapes him before he can soften it. It is not accusation, but fear, raw and exposed. He has learned not to ask questions that might unravel what little peace he has built. Still, his eyes search her face, reading every flicker of emotion in every breath she takes, as if the answer might already be written there. Because I realized something. I can dance anywhere, but I can't feel safe anywhere, except here. Her voice is calm, but beneath it lies a long journey of doubt and longing. Each sentence lands carefully, as though she has tested the truth of it many times before speaking. The barn listens with him, the walls, the animals, and the quiet night beyond, bearing witness to a confession that costs her more than she lets show. I don't want the city, Caleb. I want the savage land and the savage man who rules it. She walks toward him, steps unhurried, closing the distance that has always felt charged and dangerous. Hay shifts beneath her feet. The words are bold, almost reckless, yet spoken with unwavering resolve. In them is an acceptance of hardship, of wildness, of him, not as something to tame, but something to choose.
It's a hard life, Luna. Cold winters, hard work.
His voice cracks despite his effort to stay steady. He knows every cruelty this land can offer, the frost that bites through bone and the dawns that demand labor before mercy. He offers the truth like a warning and a shield, hoping she will see the weight of it and still turn back if she must. Sumi tagag bo sir Creen to Craig and dachat handes. Simon keep me warm. Dance with me, cowboy? She extends her hand, palm open, an invitation that feels like a vow. The gesture is small, but it carries the gravity of choice. The music swells softly, wrapping around them and urging them closer. In her eyes is trust, bright and unflinching, daring him to believe he deserves it.
I don't know how to dance to this fancy music.
A faint, almost boyish uncertainty slips into his tone. This world of grace and measured steps is far from the one that shaped him. His hands, used to reins and tools, hesitate, unsure how to hold something so delicate without breaking it. I'll lead, just hold me. The brush slips from his fingers and lands softly in the hay. Forgotten. He steps closer, arms circling her with a careful strength, as though learning a new language through touch. They begin to sway, slow and imperfect, bodies finding a shared rhythm. Horses chew quietly nearby, the mundane sounds of life grounding the moment. The barn becomes a sanctuary, suspended between earth and music.
If you stay forever. I don't do part-time.
His words are whispered against the hush, heavy with finality. This is not romance spoken lightly, but a boundary carved from experience and loss. He holds her, as if the answer could either anchor him or undo him entirely. I'm all in. Boots and all. She answers without hesitation, a soft smile touching her lips. It is not a promise made blindly, but one chosen with open eyes. Their foreheads touch, breath mingling, the world narrowing to this single point of warmth and certainty. They kiss, deep and unguarded, the kind that seals intention rather than sparks it. Outside, the wind moves through the fields, carrying the last notes of Swan Lake into the dark. The music fades, but the choice remains, rooted in the land and in each other, as the night closes gently around the barn.